Welcome, everyone. I'm Fay Shapiro, publisher with Compro Global. Today, I'm really honored to have a conversation with Vince McHugh, the VP of Network Solutions at NECS. We're going to be talking and just scratching the surface on this important topic, printers and hackers, that Vince will go more in-depth with during the March 5th webinar. One of the questions, Vince, what is this window you speak of, the window that we might be leaving open for hackers? That is provocative, so please
explain that. It is. I'll end the suspense. It's the lowly printer, the multifunctional device that sits in the corner of your office. It's always there for you when you need to make a print or a copy or a scan. But that device could be the window where hackers are coming into your network. And hacking printers is becoming quite a big deal lately.
But printers, who would want to hack my printer? The proverbial question she asked.
Right, it's a great question. Hacking a printer is really not about the printer. It's about getting access to your sensitive or confidential documents, maybe documents that have personal identifying information on. I mean, the fines on that stuff is getting crazy nowadays. And then the other benefit a hacker gets by hacking into your printer is it gives them a base of operation, a foothold, if you will, behind your firewall. I know we recently had a Security Week magazine report that there was a flaw going into a MFD where people were putting cryptocurrency miners on it. So there can be all sorts of nefarious malware that can be put onto a printer. You know, it's funny, if you ask a network admin, if it's okay if I put a node on your network, but I'm not going to put a firewall on it or any antivirus, they would probably scream at you. They'd say, no way, you can't do that. But the modern printer or multifunctional device, really, it's got a hard drive, it's got an operating system, it's got RAM memory, a touchscreen, keyboard, USB ports, it's got access to your local area network, and it's got access to the Internet. You know, it sure sounds like a node to me, and yet we're not treating it like a node when it comes to security. You know, it's funny, if I ask the same guy, hey, can I put a printer on your network? They go, here's your IP address. They don't even question me. They just, yeah, no problem, here's your IP address. Because for the most part, the IT community as a whole has ignored printers and multifunctional devices as nodes on their network. We need our IT managers and our endpoint security people to start treating printers like they treat, you know, mobile devices or PCs or servers. You know, Faye, I met with an endpoint security specialist at this high-tech company here in Massachusetts. I can't give you the name, but you'd know it if I told you. And it was funny, when we started the meeting, he had his arms folded, his legs folded. He was leaning way back in his chair and looking at me like, why am I here talking to printer people? It was kind of funny. But as we talked, I said to him, you know, are you aware that many tools like NECS, you know, the scanning tool, for example, they don't scan printers or MFDs. It actually, by default, it avoids them because it considers them fragile devices. Even Nmap, another tool that's commonly used in security, needs to have very specific settings so as not to knock a printer or an MFD off your network. It can even cause printers to spew out garbage, pages and pages of garbage, which is not really good if you have a check printer or a prescription printer. I'm sure you can imagine.
Oh, my God, it's frightening. So what makes HP printers and MFDs different, Vince?
Well, with HP, the security, it's not an afterthought. Instead of being bolted on, it's built in. You know HP makes great laptops as well, right? You're probably familiar with HP laptops.
Absolutely.
The HP laptops have this great security that HP's taken from the laptop world and put into the printer world. You know, I was talking to a manufacturer on the North Shore a couple of months back, and we've been telling them about the great things HP's doing, and the IT guys got real excited, and they said, hey, can we put one of these on our network and kick the tires for a little while? So sure, yeah, no problem. So we got it all prepped up, it's wrapped, it's ready to go. We reach out to the IT guys and say, okay, hey, where can we deliver it? And we got nothing, complete silence. We called them, we couldn't get a call back, we emailed them. It was like they went completely dark on us. Finally, our sales guy calls their help desk, which was kind of a smart move on his part. And the guy who answered was the IT guy we've been dealing with the whole time. And he said, "Oh, geez, I'm sorry. I know you guys have been reaching out to us. I really wanted to get back to you, but we're up to our elbows in alligators. Our servers have all been hacked." And it was like, "Oh my God!" He goes, "Yeah, so no problem. Well, we can wait a bit." So as the conversation went on, he asked him, "Well, how did they get in?" And the guy sheepishly said, "They got in through our printers. They hacked our printer first."
No.
And we were trying to put in HP printers to prevent that very thing, but they were able to get in through their printers.
Well, can we, from a legal standpoint, say that they've got really the most secure printers and MFDs on the planet?
Yeah, actually, they ran that through their legal department, and their legal department has said that we can say that HP has the most secure printers and MFDs on the planet. That's and specifically we're talking about the enterprise devices, not necessarily the ones you buy in a catalog or for a couple $100, but the enterprise devices are the most secure devices on the planet. And they have 4 really pillars of security, and we're going to really talk about one of them today. But I'll go over the 4 briefly, and then we'll look at one of them. So they've got something called Sure Start. Yeah, no worries. The Sure Start we'll talk about a little more in detail, but they do whitelisting, runtime intrusion, and connection inspection. We'll get more into that as we get into our webinar, which we're going to talk about later. But today, I just want to talk about one feature that can make your life so much easier if you're an IT manager, and that's Sure Start. When the MFD boots up or the printer boots up, it checks its BIOS. And if it's been hacked, and we've been hearing more and more about copies getting hacked or printers getting hacked, it will actually flush that BIOS and reload from a golden copy that can't be hacked. So it actually will boot back up in a healed state, and the IT guy doesn't have to do anything to fix that. So it's kind of a great opportunity if you are an IT manager with too much things on your hands. Now you don't have to deal with the printer security as much because the HPs put in these self-healing mechanisms. HP also provides a couple of utilities that you're probably familiar with, at least our IT folks. Well, the WebJet admin, you can use this to update firmware, or they also have this wonderful new product called Smart Device Services, and that also can be used to update the firmware. You probably, on your HP, we were talking about yours before. Do you know if that firmware has been updated any time recently, Fay?
I'm afraid to say it probably hasn't.
Probably. And you know what? It's very common. We do these printer audits all the time, and we'll find, 40%, 50%, 70% of the printers have known security flaws in their firmware that there's already a fix out there for them, but they just haven't been patched. They haven't been updated. And it's staggering. I mean, when you start looking at this, we did a hospital, and we looked at, there were hundreds of devices that had known security flaws in them. And that's the reason. Yeah, the reason people don't do it is it can take a lot of work, but HP has ways of making it easier, whether it's Smart Device Services or it's Jet Advantage Security Manager. We'll talk about that. That's an option they make available. But we're trying to do things to make it easier for our IT managers to update firmware. And with updated firmware, you get all the fixes. So somebody doesn't come along with an old script and run it against your printer, and boom, they're in because you've updated your firmware, or we've worked together to get that done.
Well, I'm wondering. Oh, I'm sorry. Just to interject, if I may.
Sure.
I'm sitting here looking at my printer and listening to your wonderful background, especially about the hospital. Are there, or what specific industry sectors are being more proactive and versus reactive? And who, so who's on the top of the list from an aggressive industry sector, and who might be on the bottom, I'm afraid to say?
It's funny. It's a good question you ask that, because we're all affected by it, but when you start getting fined, that's usually when you're willing to take action. A lot of people say, well, I really don't have the money to address this, but they always seem to find the money when the fine comes. So if you can't afford the fine, you definitely, if you can't afford to get fined, then this will be a cheaper way for you to address it ahead of time. But the industries we see a lot of is obviously healthcare. Healthcare is, with HIPAA violations, those get so expensive. Finance is another one, another heavily regulated industry. I'd like to say legal, but legal hasn't always stepped up in this area. You would think they'd be one of the first ones to jump in, but from what my anecdotal evidence, I would say I haven't seen as much legal jumping on the bandwagon to make sure the security is squared away on their printers and copiers.
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
So why don't IT and security? Maybe again a simplistic question, Vince, but hey, you're the expert. Why don't IT or security professionals update the firmware on all of their printers and MFDs?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, one thing we found with IT managers and even security managers is it's tedious to do one at a time. Even if I have 100 printers or even if I have 10 printers, and when I say printer, we're also talking about your multifunctional devices, your what we used to call copiers. To update the firmware on those can really take time consuming. So HP's offered a number of tools to be able to help update firmware automatically. They offer one optional tool called Jet Advantage Security Manager, and it can help you not only update your firmware, but it'll look at your copiers for security risks. And if it sees them, it can actually fix them. You can have like a group policy that will reach out and it will impose your will on that printer or copier. I had this guy at a hospital. He was a security expert, good guy, and he spent his days walking around the hospital with his cell phone out, searching for Wi-Fi hotspots. He was looking for people who had turned on their Wi-Fi on their printer because he considered it a security risk to have that open. Someone might be able to get into that printer, and once you're in the printer, you're on the network. So he would walk around looking for that. I said, wouldn't it be great if you could just every night go out to every printer on your network and just shut off Wi-Fi, or maybe turn off certain features that are a risk? And he said, that'd be awesome. And with Jet Advantage Security Manager, we can set that up so that your HPs can be secure overnight, every night. And if there's something wrong, it'll fix them.
Interesting.
Yeah, go ahead. With the security folks that we're talking to, they've done such a good job securing their servers and their workstations. We hire people to secure our mobile devices. That's the reason why I really think we've seen more people attacking the printers, because they haven't put the effort into the printers or the copiers. And, your chain's only as strong as your weakest link. If you don't have printer security, then do you really have security at all? Because you're leaving that window open. You may have closed the door, but that window stays open unless you actively seek to make your printers and your copiers more secure.
Wow, what a true understatement in terms of printer security. Vince, if there was one takeaway from this podcast and, to share with folks what they'll get a sense of when they join for the webcast, what would that be? What is the most important thing you want people who are looking at their printers, as I am right now, thinking, uh-oh?
Right. Yeah, I'd say, we tend to refresh our technology every couple of years. Most IT managers have a budget for when they replace their printers. We all just went through a refresh of Windows 7 and Server 2008, and we have to get them off the network because Microsoft's no longer supporting them, meaning they'll no longer be patches. We should also do a refresh of our printer technology so that maybe it's every 3 years, you replace a third of your printers. The problem's been a printer is like your refrigerator. You don't replace it unless it's broken. It just sits there and works. I'm sure the one you've had, Fay, if it's an HP, it's probably been on your desk for quite a while.
Exactly. I think 8 years maybe.
Yeah, see, that's a perfect example. And we don't replace them because they're running. And you say to someone, well, why don't we upgrade your printer? Go, well, why would I do that? It's running. Why we would do that is because even if you have an HP, if you have an old HP, you don't have this new security, this new technology. So if I was going to give one takeaway from this podcast, I would say that you should plan the replacement of your printers just like you would your mobile phones or your workstations or your servers. They should get into a rotation so that you can update them and get the best security that's available at the time.
Vince, thank you so much for sharing your expertise and your time and your a little bit scary anecdotes. but
you're welcome, Fay. It's been real enjoyable talking to you.